Hey guys, what is up? Back with another video here on practice tests. So this one is for general science. So before we get started with this one, I'm going to make sure you guys realize your actual ASVAB score is made up of only 4 categories. And so that's arithmetic reasoning, math knowledge, paragraph comprehension, word knowledge. So those 4 categories make up your ASVAB score. So how you do in any of these other categories, like today we're going to do general science, but also like auto and shop information, electronics information, mechanical comprehension, those all help you qualify for jobs. So for our case today, if there are jobs in science that you want, then how you do on the science section is definitely important. If you do not want a job in science, then you shouldn't spend any time studying it because it really doesn't matter if you miss every freaking question. It really won't impact anything. They won't care, right? You just won't get any jobs in science. So, here we go. That's the thought process. Okay, so the idea of these videos, right? We have a ton of videos on our YouTube channel and also in our apps on how to actually do the math, right? And so we'll kind of go over it, but the point here is, or how to do even the science aspects as well, because today's more science. I just said math because this first question is scientific notation, which usually is thought of as math. So it's how to do that and also how to eliminate answers that we know must be bad, right? And so that's kind of the thought process here. Other videos are for like how to really work all this stuff out. Okay, what is the scientific notation for 832,000? Okay, so for scientific notation, what you want to know is if it's a negative, that this number is going to be less than 1, right? It's going to be like 0.832 or something. So when we see 8.32 times 10 to the negative 2, 8.32 times 10 to the negative 5, you should be able to, even if you have no clue about how to actually calculate scientific notation, we should at least be able to eliminate those two, right? And really, again, even without knowing a lot about the scientific notation stuff, you know that 10 squared is 100, 10 times 10 is 100, 100 times 8 is 800, right? So you know that really this one's wrong as well. So if you need to know more about scientific notation, definitely check out our video on it. But just by process of elimination and some common sense about 10 squared, we can know that the answer is going to be this 10 to the 5th. Okay, fill in the blank with the available answers. Blank is the reason it is harder to stop a baseball flying at 100 miles per hour than it is to stop a baseball flying at 50 miles per hour. Okay, so you have, right, the speed of an object here, which is, so it's really not speed, so it's actually, when they're talking about something's going 100 miles an hour, that would be speed. Now, velocity is speed in a given direction, right? So it doesn't give us that here. And so if we know the definition of velocity, we can say this is not what they're talking about, okay? Momentum is mass times velocity, right? And so that really is what is being described here, right? A baseball, which is the mass, going at a certain speed, right? And so we are going to go with momentum for the second one. Okay, we got an ecosystem question here with biomes. So you do need to be, you don't have to know really any details of the biomes, but you would need to know kind of like what the basic characteristics are. Which of the following ecosystems could be described as housing thousands of species and has tall trees that form a ceiling from the sun above? Okay, so as you look at these answer choices, we have deciduous forest, tropical rainforest, tundra, and taiga. Okay. So, just kind of going through what each of these have. The tundra is in the Arctic Circle and is definitely the coldest of all the biomes, right? So that is not what was described here at all. So tundra is out. Taiga is a forest found in high latitudes, right? So also that's not what they're talking about here. Deciduous forest has seasons with trees losing leaves each year, and tropical rainforest is home to thousands of species and plants in a tropical rainforest, there really isn't a dry season, and tropical rainforests are located near the equator. So that's pretty obviously the answer that we want. So we want to kind of just be able to be aware of each of the biomes in a sentence or two. And if you want details on it, we have a YouTube video on that you could find. It's all about biomes and ecosystems. All right, question 4 of 15 here. Unoxygenated blood travels to the heart via which of the following? Okay, so what you want to know here is that the veins carry blood devoid of oxygen to the right atrium of the heart, while arteries, capillaries, and the aorta carry oxygenated blood from the heart to blood cells throughout the body. So that pretty much gives us our answer, right? So it's one of those where if you didn't know that, then you're just guessing. So there's no real trick to eliminating answers or anything here. Just something that you got to know. In vertebrates, which substance gives red blood cells their color? Okay, so as you look at this, so again, with the eliminating answers, I guess it just sort of depends on what you're aware of, but so dopamine is a neurotransmitter in the brain. So if you know that, then you know you can eliminate the answer of dopamine. Melatonin is a hormone that regulates sleep, so that can't be right. Carotene are pigments important for photosynthesis? That still doesn't sound quite right. So what's hemoglobin? Hemoglobin is used by all vertebrates to transport oxygen and carbon dioxide in the body and gives red blood cells their color. So that's definitely the answer that we want. So all of those are questions of whether or not you're familiar with the terms, but if you are, then hemoglobin is the obvious answer. Okay. How many different elements are present in glucose, which is C6H12O6? Okay. So don't get caught up in the little subscripts here, these numbers, right? The nature of the elements is that you have carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen, right? Carbon, hydrogen, oxygen. So that's 3 elements. So our answer is 3. On the pH scale, any substance below what number is considered acid? Okay, so what you want to know is that the pH scale goes from 0 to 14, and 7 is flat right in the middle, right? So if you have a pH of 7, it's neither acidic or basic, it's just neutral, right? So that's the thing to know there, is below the number 7. DNA has which of the following structures? Okay, pretty simple DNA question here. Right, so DNA is made up of a double helix, which looks like a twisted ladder. So we'll go with double helix there. Any of these are definitely going to be wrong. Again, we have videos on all this stuff if you want more details and more information. Excuse me. Which of the following plants lacks a vascular system? So this is probably the hardest question so far. Liverworts are bryophytes, which are characterized by lack of a vascular system. So that's going to be your answer. It's one of those where you just sort of had to know. It's a tough question, but that's the answer. Which of the following symbols represents one of the elements present in NaCl? Okay, so what you're looking at here is to know that when you're looking at NaCl, Na is sodium and Cl is chlorine, right? So you were looking for an answer that was either Na or Cl, and you have an Na here, right? But C is just carbon, like N is just nitrogen, so those are not a part of NaCl. Harappan is an anticoagulant. What is the primary purpose of drugs like Harappan? Okay, so this is a good eliminating answers type question, right? So that, sorry, there's a good question. There's a good possibility that you have no idea, right? You look at something like this, it's like, okay, I don't know. But two of these answers can't be right, right? So to cause nauseousness, there's no drug where that's the purpose. So it may have that side effect, but it's not what the purpose is. To cause drowsiness, same thing. Why would anybody get a drug so that you could be drowsy, right? So then you should feel like, okay, there's two possible answers here, which would be to prevent the heart from stopping or to prevent the blood from clotting. So at least you've increased your chances from 25%, 1 out of 4 chance of getting it right just by guessing, to 50%. And if you know anything about anticoagulants, is that they stop blood from clotting. So that's the answer there. Okay, organic compound. So the main thing you want to know about organic compounds is that all organic compounds contain carbon. So once you know that, then it's pretty easy, right? Because glucose is the only one that contains carbon. Salt, potassium, and water, none of them do. So the answer will be glucose. All right, only 3 left. What is the latitude of any point on Earth's equator? Okay, so the latitude on the equator is always 0. So just that should be pretty straightforward, I think. I'm not sure how to explain that further, but if you didn't know that, then think that through. Latitude always 0. Longitude would be a different story, but latitude always 0. Okay, another one where we can eliminate a few answers here. What does a anemometer measure? So you have temperature, wind speed, humidity, air pressure, right? So if you're not familiar with anemometers, then you might just like randomly guess and say, let's move on to the next one. So that's not what I would do. In that, as you kind of think of it, so okay, so temperature. So you know what kind of tool measures temperature? That would be a thermometer, right? So I think most people are familiar with that if you just think about it for a second. Okay, so then you should be able to eliminate, like, temperature definitely can't be the right answer. Air pressure, how do you measure air pressure? So it's a little bit harder, but barometer measures air pressure, and if you kind of think that out, okay, so it's not air pressure. And then you probably get down to wind speed and humidity. So the tool that measures humidity is something called a hygrometer. So a lot of people are not familiar with that. And then wind is actually the anemometer, right? So wind speed is the correct answer. But we should be able to get it at least, again, down to 2, right? And so thinking, like, if you think of these questions here, like there's 15 questions. So like say you know 8 of them, or let's say 9, so that we have an even number here. Say you know 9 of them, right? And there's 6 where you don't know, but you can get most of those down to 50-50, right? And you get 3 right and you get 3 wrong. Then you got 12 out of 15. That's a really good score for the science section. So as opposed to if you were just randomly guessing at those 6, maybe you only get like 1 of them right? And then it's down to 10, so not quite as good of a score. So without really knowing anything more about science, just taking time, using common sense to see if you can eliminate a few answers can help out your score quite a bit. And that's true for all the sections and for really any test you ever take. All right, 10,000 centimeters equals how many kilometers? Okay, so first thing we have to know is how many centimeters are in a meter, right? Centi means 100. So we have 100 centimeters equals 1 meter. Okay, the next thing we need to know is 1,000 meters equals 1 kilometer. Okay, so if 100 centimeters equals 1 meter, then 10,000 centimeters equals 100 meters, if you guys are still with me, right? So we started off 100 centimeters is a meter, and now we're saying 10,000 centimeters equals 100 meters. So you can go and do the math on that if you want, but the nature of it is I just added from 100 centimeters